Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have one of the best. Clara is one of the best in describing, I guess, humanizing the experience of perfectionism. We are type A people. We want the most out of ourselves. We're always chasing. It's not a flaw in you. You're human. That is all it is. It is a human trait. Everything that we do, everything that holds us back, anything that's stopping us from getting us to where we want to be, it's serving us in some way. Well, not really now, but it has in the past. My favorite, Clara, I'll let you introduce this with where you feel and see this perfectionism popping up and how it stops people from getting to where they want to be.
Yeah, thank you so much for the very flattering introduction, Ruby, as always. I'm going to start blushing as we go. But yeah, I think you described it perfectly, right? Like a lot of us struggle with this idea that we have to be doing health and fitness in a very specific way, but it doesn't start with health and fitness. Often those of us who struggle with being perfectionistic in our health and fitness struggle with being perfectionistic everywhere else in our life. And it's this constant cycle of setting goals, or I guess even before that, starting from a place of not feeling like we're good enough, which then leads us to set goals that are way beyond where we are realistically at right now. Because those goals are so beyond that, we might be able to meet them for a very short period of time, but then eventually we'll kind of start to fall short. And the discrepancy between where we actually are and where our mind's inner critic wants us to be is so great that it brings up a lot of distress. It's incredibly frustrating, and that makes us often feel like, well, there's no fucking point in trying, right? And that's where we either double down and keep trying even harder, or eventually just press the fuck it button. And I hope it's okay for me to swear a little bit, but we end up, just self-sabotaging essentially and going, do you know what? I can't be bothered. What's the point if I'm not going to be perfect? I'm not even going to try. And that's where we go the complete and utter opposite way. And, it's in my understanding as a psychologist, that's because we are unwilling and unable to tolerate the discomfort that comes from seeing that we're not as perfect as we think that we are, because we put so much of our self-worth on like that perfectionistic ideal. And when we realize that we're not there yet, it's too much to cope with, and we just go, do you know what? I don't even want to look at this. I just bury my head in the sand, self-sabotage, go the opposite way, ignore, pretend I don't care, we brush it off, well, whatever, it is what it is, I can just do this whenever I want to. And then eventually we realize that we still feel crap, and as in like nothing's changed from the beginning, we still don't feel like we're good enough. And on top of that, we are however many meals, days, workouts, months, years further away from where we started, because we were self-sabotaging, because we were getting in our own way, which then leaves us feeling like we're still not good enough. But because that discomfort has increased, then we're more likely to set even more gargantuous goals, even bigger goals, because we feel so uncomfortable. And that stretch idea makes us feel it's a comfort, it's a sense of control. At least if I'm going to be working towards these big goals, I'll be able to do something about that. But it just creates an illusion of control, and we just end up looping over and over and over. And I think both you and I experience this in our day-to-day life with our clients, that we can kind of get to see it. And it's, compassionately, it's incredibly hard to see in our clients and to witness, because you can see what's going on, and yet breaking that cycle is incredibly difficult. So I think that's where, if I understood correctly, I think that's where we kind of want to take this conversation and have some reflections around that.
Yeah, because it shows itself in so many ways, including getting to our body goals, like that discomfort that you mentioned. There's the discomfort of pushing something long enough. Like if I use that as an example before I go back to this thing, because I just started this amazing book, I need to send you the screenshots. I think you'll love them. But it's the discomfort of actually doing something for long enough that doesn't have you can't control the outcome. Like you literally can't control the outcome. What can you control? You feel in control. Like this is where that conversation on you only feel like you're making progress when you're in your diet. You only have this identity in a diet. If you're not on a diet, it's almost like you don't know what to cling to. There's nothing to cling to because you feel so out of control. If you're not monitoring the scale like a hawk, you feel so out of control. And then this is where people you will always fall short of your physique goals if you think that you need to diet every single year, because the goal is to stack on literally as much muscle as you can to get that lean look that you want. And that requires not really seeing as much change as you would in a fat loss phase if you do it right for longer than a year, for longer than that. And this does not mean gaining fat. It just means not eating in a deficit. It means not having the bliss of seeing the scale going down, and there's that discomfort. But I wanted to reiterate what you said because I want you to go deeper into it. Where you mentioned that that's when we start to add more in. It says in this book, instead of being able to be content and step away, that's when we start to overcompensate by trying to outwork. And we strive for busyness, racking up endless hours or whatever it is. This can be like you try to do more, add more in because it feels like it's productive. And it says here that exactly what you said, we feel like we're under threat. So before we know it, our fear of failing, of being judged, of some exaggerated threat impairs our ability to take action. But how exactly is this illusion, like this illusion of control, this need to control, where is it coming from? How can we work through this? How can we start to peel back from that so we can see there is another way? Because our inner critic's not going to let us. We don't want to fail. We don't want to trust ourselves with that.
Yeah. Well, the need for control is just a human need for understanding our environment. There's no other way of getting around it. Like, that's not a you, a me, or an any one specific thing. That's just an evolution thing. Like, throughout the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, we've developed this ability to have to try and understand our environment, have to try and be in control. Because if you think about this again from a very evolutionary perspective, like, our ancestors were living in such uncontrollable situations that they had to create ways of almost like predicting the world around them. And we're no different, right? Especially when we're confronted with the unknown, where we're confronted with not just the unknown of like our body and our shape, but like the unknown of the world. Like, there's so many things that we don't know about. And I mean, I am going to get a bit existential here, but really it is that we don't know what's happening in the globe. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know what's going to happen to the people around us. Like, there's so many things about being alive and being human that we cannot control. And so that's really difficult for our minds. And when we are confronted, or when we find ourselves being able to control something as tangible as how much we eat, how much we exercise, what we look like, our body image, etc., that provides such an easy thing to hold on to that our mind latches on because it's so comforting. It's like, oh my gosh, I can breathe now. Like, I understand what's going on. That's why we have this need for control. It's because throughout evolution, like, the unknown, that uncertainty, it was incredibly, incredibly difficult for us. And that has not changed. Although we live in much more predictable environments these days, that kind of existential piece of being human, that part of us that has evolved throughout all those hundreds of thousands of years by no choice or fault of our own, has kind of, it's persisted. So that need for control is there. And food, exercise, our appearance provides us with a very, especially in the Western world, provides us with a very tangible way of clinging on to it. Now, same kind of goes for our inner critic. Our inner critic is something that we've developed the capacity for over time. Again, from an evolutionary perspective, very, very useful to be able to be critical of oneself, especially when it comes to comparing our behavior to other people's, because we lived in groups. And if the group isolated you, if I'm thinking cavemen and women here, if the group isolated you, you would probably die because you wouldn't have shelter, you wouldn't have food, you wouldn't know how to defend yourself against predators, or you could eat something that could kill you. So that ability to be self-critical is essential to our survival. And yet nowadays it shows up in such overwhelmingly horrendous ways. But the goal shouldn't be to get rid of the inner critic. The goal should be to balance out the inner critic. So still have it there because it provides us with some really useful information, but to be able to balance it out with some self-compassion so that it's not the only voice or the dominant voice, so that there's also some other perspectives that we can consider, because the same thing can be true depending on what angle we look at it from. So we can choose to kind of align with the perspective of the inner critic, or we can, over time with practice, of course, curate and nurture other perspectives that are already available to us, that we have the capacity for, and start to look at the same situation from those angles. That often makes it a lot easier to then move forward and make decisions that are more aligned with our values, that are more aligned with our goals.
This brings up the thought of people feeling like they never move fast enough as well. So that in itself is something that doesn't feel like you're doing like that. You just cling tighter to something. And the more that you try to control something, it's funny how the less of a control you end up having, but there's still this illusion of control because you're doing something productive. But like, how can we, what do you make of that?
Well, it's the quicksands metaphor, right? Like, you fall into quicksands and you start sinking. And the thing that you do when you are in water and sinking is you start to try to fight it. But with quicksands, the harder you fight, the deeper you sink. And so we have to do the opposite of what feels normal, what feels comfortable is, you know, actually just relax and ease into it. If you relax and ease into quicksand, you come up to the top and you're floating and you're fine, you know. But it's the opposite. And instinctively, when our gut feeling kicks in, we want to fight it, we want to push up against it, but that's only gonna, you know, get us to sink deeper. It's exactly the same when it comes to weight loss, when it comes to fat loss. There could be kind of anything going on in our life, right? Let's just say that we have had like loads of stress from work and family life and shit like that, and suddenly we find ourselves almost like wanting to double down on our calorie deficit. We want to really control it, and the harder we control our calorie deficit, the worse we look, the worse we end up. Like, you know, our physique isn't progressing the way that we want it to. We want change straight away, but we're not getting it. The thing that we need to do is the opposite to what our mind default wants us to do. It's accept that it's going to be really, really uncomfortable, and that's such a big piece, and learn to almost like peel ourselves away from the panic, because the panic's going to be right up in our face, and it's being able to kind of like separate ourselves, understand what's happening, have this kind of like, oh yeah, I see that I'm panicking, I can see that I'm responding to this fear, I can see that I'm responding to this need to control things. How is it actually serving me in this moment, and what would something different, like, is there something different that I can do when I observe this from a distance? Because if I'm in it, I can't really see the wood from the trees. Like, if you're in a quicksand and you're fighting and you're sinking deeper, you might not be able to realize that you're doing that you're panicking, and that there's a different option. But someone from the outside can quite clearly point out, hey, you know, that thing that you're doing, obviously they wouldn't say it in such a calm way, is not helping. So how about you just relax and do the opposite? It'd be really, really difficult to make that choice. So yeah, when you're in it, it's learning how to clock the fact that you are clutching at straws to try and control everything around you, noticing that and going, okay, I'm trying to control, all these control strategies are leading me to sink deeper. What is the literal opposite action of this? And in making the choice to do that, like, if I was to choose to do that, how would that impact me right now? What would the long-term effect of that be?
It's really hard to see yourself as your future self, especially in the moment. And there's two different sides of this. There's the I feel good when I'm dieting. People always relate feeling good to dieting or to losing weight, or yeah, literally, it's when you're on a diet that is your means of I'm making progress. But if that was the answer, then you would have your results by now. And then something else that you mentioned, which I feel like this is something to really go deep into, because we always will revert back to the path that we know the most. Like, we're going to keep repeating that because it's the path well traveled. It's what we just default to. And we can bring in the example as well of people that have struggled a lot to get to where they are now and probably have made some progress. Mm-hmm. And they are so scared of losing it that there is that element of fear to do the opposite. So they just keep fighting upstream and getting harder on themselves, never feel like they're doing enough, never feel like they're moving fast enough. How do you break that cycle of just continuing on the same spiral? And I guess you're really good with bringing in self-compassion here. So maybe that also has a place.
You literally just anticipated my answer. I was going to say the way that you break that cycle is with self-compassion. Like, that is the only, self-compassion and acceptance is the tools and the psychological skills that helps us introject that cycle at any given point. If you feel not good enough, and that's what leads you to set ridiculously high goals, if you bring in self-compassion, that can balance out the fact that you don't feel good enough, and therefore there's no longer a need to set such high goals. You might be more likely to set goals that meet you where you're at. If you do find yourself setting those goals that are way too high, and then you end up failing at them, if you bring in self-compassion, it makes the result of the failure feel a lot less intense, and it makes you much more likely to be able to respond to yourself with kindness rather than like double down on the self-criticism that then makes you feel like bad because you felt bad to begin with and bad because you've not met your goals. If you then find yourself being really critical of the fact that you've failed at your goals, and that leads you to self-sabotage normally, if you bring in self-compassion at that particular point, you're less likely to press the fuck up button and self-sabotage completely, because you're understanding that there's a reason for why you failed, and you can kind of like take a bit more time, and maybe the self-sabotage goes on for like a day rather than, you know, 5 months, perhaps, just to give you one example. If you do end up self-sabotaging, if you bring in self-compassion at that particular point of the cycle, it's more likely, you're less likely to feel so terrible about yourself for self-sabotaging. You're more likely to realize that you're human, that it's okay, that it's really not the end of the world, and that you can do something about it now. And again, if you've self-sabotaged and you've been on that cycle and you've totally ruined it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel awful, now I need to set some crazy goals, again, self-sabotage back at that cycle point, self-compassion, sorry, at that cycle point again, would be the thing that prevents you from setting yourself up to fail, essentially. So yeah, self-compassion is the antidote to breaking that cycle, and you can bring it in at any given point, depending on where it is that you find, well, depending on where you're at, and depending on where you might find it easier to interject at this given point, because self-compassion is a skill. It's one that we're not taught. It's an incredibly difficult thing to cultivate, especially if you're a perfectionist, and if your default's always been inner criticism. It's all you've ever known, right? It's that well-trodden path, but it's not helping you. So that's why self-compassion often makes us cringe, but it's so essential. It's so essential to our well-being. It's honestly, I cannot understate how important this stuff is for our well-being.
I think a huge part of this also is just misunderstanding, because there's a difference between self-criticism and being disciplined, and there is a difference between trying to hold control of everything versus having a structure that allows you to be more free. Because if you have the main thing structured, then you can be more free around it. And self-compassion doesn't mean letting yourself go and taking yourself off the hook. It's trying to find this balance and understanding how it all comes together. But I feel like something that someone else mentioned is proximity and closeness, like the proximity and closeness with our thoughts and our experiences, because they're usually just signals to us. Like, is it a fear of not being accepted? Is it a fear of something that someone else is going to say? Because something that I feel like you can actually brush on next is it really this diet? Is it really going to fix things? Or is it just going to make you happy and feel good? Contingent on the fact that you just lost weight, contingent on the fact that you're eating less and you quote unquote feel good within your body because you mentally know you're on a diet. You mentally know that you're not eating as much as you're used to eating and feeling full. So how, I guess with that part in mind, how do you know when your inner critic is actually holding you back versus pushing you to improve? And how can we find this balance if all we can see is the inside of the box, because we can't see the label and what's going on outside of the box when we're stuck inside?
Yeah.
And most of us won't get on the ladder to get out.
Totally. So couple of things in there, just to, yeah, exactly what you said at the beginning there, that self-compassion isn't letting yourself off the hook. Self-compassion, there's two parts to it. The first part is acknowledging and honoring the thing that's distressing, and the second part of self-compassion is doing something about it. It is not kind to wallow in self-pity. We need to be able to acknowledge that something is hurting us, that something is not serving us, that something is causing us distress. But if you don't do anything about it, that's not compassionate at all, because then you're just allowing yourself to stay in the shit, and like, who's that helping? It's not helping anybody. So that's a really, really important caveat in there. I think that what you reflected on there in terms of like the proximity to our thoughts and how to know if our inner critic is the thing that's driving the behavior, I think what we need to start to pay attention to is what it feels like. Because from the outside, let's just say someone that goes to the gym consistently, someone that tracks their calories, someone that is engaging in an intentional fat loss phase, that two people could be doing the same thing, but the experience of it will feel really, really different. For the person who's doing that from a place of self-criticism, essentially they might feel like they're escaping this fear of failure. They're constantly on edge. They feel really anxious. They're constantly feeling like it's not good enough. The decision to set the goals in the particular way that they have set the goals is coming from this real place of like, you better do this or else. Like, it's very tense. It doesn't feel nice. And it's very likely that they end up in this kind of feeling of overwhelm very, very quickly from overdoing. Whereas when we're setting these goals, when we're engaging in this, like, I guess, disciplined action, for lack of a better term, and showing up consistently, but it's coming from a place of like, no, this is really important to me. I feel really grounded. I can meet myself where I'm at, though. Like, if some days I need to be a bit more psychologically flexible, if I need to move things around, if I can't quite get it in this ideal perfectionistic way, like, it's okay. I can be quite accepting of that. I can kind of sit with the idea of like, okay, well, maybe I need to refine this. Maybe that wasn't ideal the way that happened. The behaviors can look exactly the same from the outset, but in order to know whether it's our inner critic that's getting in the way in some shape or form, getting in the way by inhibiting us from doing the thing that matters, or from keeping us in this ongoing never-ending cycle, is we need to pay attention to our inner experience. What does this actually feel like for me when I do this thing? What does it feel like if I don't manage to do this thing? What are the voices inside of my head saying to me? And I think that's where a lot of us fall short, because A, well, nobody taught us how the heck to do that, and B, if your headspace isn't a particularly nice place to be in, then it's unsurprising that you're avoiding it. Like, I wouldn't want to be in contact with really critical thoughts. And so, you know, what I'm essentially saying is we need to be more mindful, we need to be more present, we need to be more aware with the content of our minds and with our physical experience, like the sensations inside of our body. But in order to do that, we have to be willing to pay attention to the sensations and thoughts that are actually there for us. And if those sensations and feelings aren't very nice, you know, if somebody feels in their body, let's say someone wants to lose weight and they feel that, you know, their weight is not in a place where they feel comfortable in their body, like, what I'm asking you to do is pay attention to how your body feels. What I'm literally asking you to do is sit with the discomfort of your body and get to know it. I'm saying don't avoid it. But if you feel uncomfortable, like, who in their right mind would want to sit and like be in contact with something that's really uncomfortable for them? Do you see what I mean? Like, it's really, really difficult to do what we're asking people to do. And that's why it takes so much time, and that's why we get so tangled up in these loops, because it's freaking hard stuff to do.
I actually love that you ended on that part, because now it's not going to be such a jolt to what I'm about to say. But change is freaking hard. And we are so used to doing things a certain way. Not just that, but it is so hard to just fast, to just cut your calories really low, go gung-ho, see really fast results, get the rewards from that, and then not really keep them. Like, we find it so hard. I don't know how it's even possible, but just so many people find it so easy to just grind and push and get hard on themselves. No, I have to do it this way. I'm type A. I need to know exactly what it's going to look like. Actually, that just brought up another point too. Have to know exactly what it's going to look like. But then when we try to do things in a compassionate way, that gives you real long life results where you can thrive. Things that are different, that require you to slow down to learn the things that aren't as restrictive, come with, I guess you can even say, uncertainty here, because there's never certainty in the future. Like, you can't promise anything. Oh, but I need to know exactly how this is going to look. What's it going to look like in 4 months' time? There's still that element of control that so many people can have when they're so used to clinging to needing to know exactly how things go. Like, I need to lose weight straight away. I need to cling on to the scale. Okay, but how about we do this the right way? We get you results that are actually in the life of it.
Yeah, I think it's such a real difficulty. I'm like, you know, part one is just having compassion for the fact that it is hard. I don't think, like, as coaches, especially when we're confronted with those struggles in our clients, I think that it's a really important thing. And as clients, you know, when we're engaging in this process, having compassion for the fact that this is going to be uncomfortable and difficult is such a real part, and acknowledging that you're not going to like it. But you don't have to like it. You just have to be willing to move through it. And with that willingness comes, you know, the capacity for acceptance, you know, for sitting with discomfort. But you don't have to like it. You know, there's parts of this journey that aren't particularly pleasant, but when it's aligned with our values, you know, it becomes worth it over time. It's just really, really hard when we need that control, when we need that tangible answer, and I think, kind of coming back to your point of like, well, what's this going to look like in 4 months' time? People have this real need of confirmation that, okay, I don't feel good now, but will I be feeling good in 4 months' time? That's what they're really asking, right? That's what we really want to know. If I do this thing now, because I really don't like myself, will I like myself more in the future? Because that's really important to me. And because we hinge like that, liking ourselves on how we look, on being in control, etc., 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 that's why we're making the assumption, like, that's why we need that certainty. Like, please tell me that what I do, it's so unbearable to be me right now in my body, in my head. Please tell me that it won't feel so shit in 4 months' time. Whereas the bad news is that you take yourself through that journey, right? Like, you could, the best example I can give is, like, you could go on the most luxurious, incredible, all covered holiday in the most beautiful location, but you're taking yourself there. So it doesn't matter where you are. If being you is not a nice place to be, it's not going to be the same in 4 months' time. Can it make a difference? Can weight loss, can changing our physique help us feel better about ourselves? 100%. But if I gave you a magic wand, swish and flicked you into the future, and it was still you inside of your mind with that mindset, in that future body without having gone through that process, I can tell you already it wouldn't last that long, because part of the process and part of the reason why I think we do feel better when we achieve the transformation, when we get to that particular place, is because we've had to take ourselves through. We've seen ourselves, we've observed ourselves over time engaging in the behaviors that we said we were going to do. We're doing the things that we've acknowledged, honored, named as being important to us. And when we see ourselves doing the things that matter consistently, when we see ourselves showing up in alignment with our values consistently, and we do that over and over and over and over and over again, irrespective of the actual outcome, because we're moving towards our values, suddenly we're like, oh my gosh, like I'm showing up as the type of person that I want to be showing up in the world. And that makes such a big difference. That's part of why that transformation journey leads to such a big I'm yet to see a transformation post by a coach online where they don't honor the fact that someone's physical transformation has been accompanied by a mental or psychological transformation along the way, because it's impossible for it not to be that way. Go for it.
Oh no, that part's the. I wish I could just like somehow bottle that up and get people to see it that way. It is so difficult, because I had the most, like, back when I think it was 2016. If I look back at photos, 2016 was my most amazing physique state. Yeah. And I was caught in the same dopamine cycle. Like, it was addicting. Dieting is addicting. And then I just kept dieting. I did quote unquote mini bulks. And over time, I just looked worse, because there's no such thing as mini bulks. You don't build muscle that fast. And you're never going to feel like, it's never about the body, and you never see yourself as you are. Yet there's like, how would you even respond to, but I don't like how I look right now, I need to diet. I want to do another fat loss phase. I think it's time for another fat loss phase. I'm feeling really chubby right now. Like, that didn't come out of nowhere. And this goes back to are you feeling good within your body, contingent on the fact that you just did a diet, contingent on the fact that you are lighter on the scale. Yeah. What's going to happen then?
Yeah, it's so difficult. It's so difficult. And when someone did, I don't like how I look right now, of course, like when we say I want to then do a fat loss phase, all you're doing is you're just avoiding, and you're trying to escape the feeling of discomfort in your body right now. Understandably so. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Of course you do. We feel discomfort. We want to rid ourselves of it. We want to avoid it. We want to escape it. Some people want to engage in a fat loss phase. Other people end up binging when they feel bad in their body, right? Like, we try to do something when these uncomfortable and unwanted thoughts and feelings show up for us in our mind and our body. We want to rid ourselves of them. We want to either escape them, suppress them, numb them, etc. So of course you want to respond in that way. And so I guess in that moment, it's like getting up and instead of avoiding the feeling, it's about turning towards it and getting up and close with it. And I guess I would want to understand, okay, well, if you don't like how you look right now, like, how is that affecting you? Tell me a bit more about, like, you not liking how you look right now. What else does that have an impact on in your life? Like, how are you responding to the world around you? And very often people get so tangled up in I don't like the way that I look right now, that they stop doing the things that bring them joy. And when you stop doing the things that bring you joy, like, is it any surprise that you feel like shit? Of course not. Whereas if we can have this, I don't like the way that I look right now, but it's not stopping me from doing all the things that are important to me in my life, like, I could tell you with a lot of certainty that wouldn't be like, it wouldn't weigh as heavily on your mind, pun unintended. Like, it would probably be okay, I can, you learn to live with it in a much easier way. So again, I don't like the way that I look right now, I need to engage in a fat loss phase. It's us trying to escape that feeling of discomfort. And what I said earlier is we need to do the opposite to what our knee-jerk reaction wants us to do. Fall into quicksands, you try to swim your way out of it, it's not gonna work, right? This is the same. You feel the discomfort in your body, dieting your way out of it is not going to work. It's not worked before, it's not going to work again. You can only bash your head against a wall so many times before you start to wonder why the hell you've got a headache, right? So, but it's about realizing that we have to do something different. And in the realization of doing something different, and in the doing something different, it's sitting with the real uncomfortable feeling of, well, I don't like how I feel right now. Why am I not responding to this, right? It's learning how to respond to it, not with a behavior of fat loss, but with thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of acceptance, of self-kindness. And I'm telling you right now, that makes it A lot more enjoyable, and B, when it does come to actually, losing weight, if that is important to you, it makes it so much more enjoyable and way more sustainable over time, so you don't have to keep spinning your freaking wheels. But again, it's a skill. It takes time. It's really, really freaking hard. Like I'm saying this when I'm holding your hand, because I know, like, this is what I do day in, day out as a psychologist, as a coach. Like, this is my job. And I know how freaking hard it is. I know how long it takes. But it's possible. It's 100,000% possible. It's just grueling. And I know. I put my hands up and I say this to my clients. I'm like, you're not going to like me very much. And this is going to take longer than you think. And you're going to have to put in some graft into clocking those thoughts and doing something different. But it will be worth it. I know that you don't know what it's going to be like. I know that you don't think that you're capable of self-compassion. I know that you don't see a world in which you don't feel critical all the time. It is possible though. And you're just going to have to like learn to trust me and learn to feel uncomfortable. And we're going to work through that discomfort together, but it's not going to be very nice.
It's going to take longer than you think. Those words, I feel like, is the discomfort that you mentioned at the very beginning, because it's not comfortable for things to take so long, and we're getting more and more impatient with things, and that's exactly why we get stuck with things. This can even go back to when you say that you're eating more food to build muscle. There's the impatience. It's like wanting to see things now, but then there's the fake muscle building, which is just you feeling like you're getting bigger because it's a different sensation. But there's that discomfort of things taking a really long time. So you go back to what you know the most. And I guess that can also come up once again. But in that process of what you were explaining, this is where that don't shoot yourself with the third arrow comes in, because the first arrow, mistake, not your fault. The second arrow, okay, a doozy, learn from it now, don't repeat it. The third arrow, you're just causing a lot more pain on yourself than is actually needed. And that is where a lot of people find themselves, because they're in such a rush to get to this end outcome. If you're running and you have not even given the tiles freaking time to dry, you're going to slip and crack your bloody head open. Like, you can't, that's the image I get when I think about it. Just like trying to run while the floor's wet. It's like you're going nowhere. You're going to face plant. We need to take our time and walk across the floor in a way that we're not going to slip and trip ourselves.
Percent. But I think it's, we're in such a rush to get to the outcome. Are we in a rush to get to the outcome, or are we in a rush to escape this uncomfortable feeling, right? Like, I think it's more that. I think it's the fact that we are, both. But I think that often it starts from this willingness and this unbearable sensation, feeling that is so uncomfortable that we just want to get rid of ourselves of it for so, like, super quickly, or as quickly as we can. I think that's what it is. That's why we're in such a rush to get to the end outcome, because we're promised that we will feel better in ourselves when we get there. But again, if you don't feel good in yourself getting there or on the journey, it's not going to be very fun when you get there either. And that's why you'll feel like it's not enough. And then because it's not enough, oh my gosh, I've done all this effort, I've lost all this weight, I still feel shit about myself. Well, fuck it, that was so hard. I was dieting for so long, I was running myself to the ground, I was doing so much cardio every single day, and I still feel shit about myself. Why would I if I'm going to feel shit about myself anyway, why would I try killing myself over it? And that's when we press the fuck it button, and then that's when we go, well, I don't care, I'm just going to stop here. And then we still feel shit 6 months later, and we go, oh my God, I have to do the same thing again, right? So it's not so much the running towards that end outcome, it's running away from the discomfort. And if we stop running away from the discomfort, we sit with it for a little bit longer, we work through our mindset, we develop the skill of being more compassionate, of being more accepting of ourselves, then we can take our time, and then we can carry that self-compassion and that acceptance with us. But we'll be walking, not running towards where we want to go to.
I think this also is tied into the fact that we feel like we should have it all figured out already. We should figure it all out on our own. I want you to talk about that more as well, but that part there that you mentioned with it's this chase that we are in that is not really a chase forwards, but more so where it's like something's chasing us. We're running away. We don't realize that something's chasing us this whole time. And if something's been chasing us this whole time, think about being in the jungle with a lion running after you. That's fight and flight mode. When you're in fight and flight mode, some level of stress serves you to a certain point. That's what that thought brought up. When we put so much pressure on ourselves and when we're so hard on ourselves, that's because, yes, it served us at a point. Well, we it somehow in a way served us at a point to get to a high level within our jobs,
Totally.
or to get to a high level within our lives. But it's not serving us right now in order to make our lives happy. It's like, okay, but what do you want in life? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be able to achieve these results and feel good within your life? Because you're not going to feel good when you're getting chased by a lion the whole time with your fight and flight mode in full alert, where all these other fears then start to come in, and then you start to overcompensate with more things. And then this is where that self-sabotage comes in. This is where that fuck bucket comes in that you mentioned before, which I feel like I want you to talk about most, because that's where a lot of people find themselves, kind of like the conversation I had with you before. Like, we have to have things done perfectly. If the situation isn't perfect and I'm sick and I can't do things the way that I should be doing things so that I can get results, I should be able to go to the gym, I should be able to get my walk. That's what I'm paying my coach for, XYZ. I can't do all these things, I'm not ticking all the boxes. And that whole, like, that is literally the panic that you're hearing inside of your own head because you're running away from this line.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, I think it's that idea that we should be able to figure all these things out. And for some reason, it only applies to fitness. Like, you don't go to the doctor and berate yourself because you couldn't figure out what was wrong with you. Like, you don't go to the surgeon and berate yourself because you couldn't do the surgery on yourself. So why are we expecting ourselves to be able to just like figure the shit out on our own? Like, there's a reason why you and I've got jobs, Ruby, because this stuff is hard. Like, just that on its own should tell us enough about the fact that like these things are not straightforward, and these things don't just come easily. But again, if throughout our entire lives we've always, like, things have come easily to us, if we have never had to work particularly hard at achieving goals, whether that be in school, whether that be in work and stuff, like, it's very, very easy to see this, you know, health and fitness stuff as a moral failing, as a personal failing. And I think that the fitness industry does us a huge disservice because it makes it look like if you're not doing all the stuff, you're a bad person. Like, that's what the fitness industry is teaching us, that you're a bad person if you're not healthy, if you're not taking care of yourself. How dare you let your body down? My God, you know, you owe it to yourself. I mean, yes, you do owe it to yourself, but like, how the fuck is that helping anybody by shaming us? Like, it doesn't work at all. So that, like you said, that perfectionistic mindset, it serves a point. Of course it does. And like, these things aren't random, right? If we've always been perfectionistic and our perfectionism has gotten us to this point of success, of course we're going to try and repeat that same pattern. But perfectionism doesn't always look the same, right? We've got perfectionistic striving, which is moving towards something, trying to do our best because, you know, the end result's really important to us. Like, we really want to, you know, do a really good job. We want to be very thorough with it. And then there's perfectionistic concern, which is where we're escaping. We're trying to be perfectionistic to escape the fear of failure, to escape the feeling of not being good enough. And they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So something could come from like a place of perfectionistic striving. I'm doing this, I'm doing really well, I'm loving it, this is really great. And then suddenly something starts to happen and we go, shit, I hate the way that fear, or like, I hate the way that failure feels to me. And that's when it can turn into perfectionistic concern. But it makes sense. Like, we don't just wake up and decide, oh, do you know what? I can't wait to be super black and white in my thinking today. I cannot wait to be super all nothing. Like, it doesn't happen that way. There's a reason for it, right? And that's where we get really tangled up. So yeah, when we're in fight or flight or freeze or flop, right? Because all of those are threat responses, either paralyzed by overanalysis and we feel like we can't take any action, or when we're doing the thing, it gives us a feeling of control. Again, I'm escaping this feeling, I'm escaping the lion, I'm doing something about it, and that makes me feel productive. But I could be running around the forest for hours and hours and hours and not get any further away from it. And that's where we get tangled up. I don't know if that's answered the question. Oh, and I did write down that sometimes we can be aware, and we can understand that logically the thing that we're doing isn't helping, but doing something different is so scary because we've never done it, that's kind of what prevents us from even starting, right? Just the fear of the unknown. And I think that a lot of people too, if they've never experienced self-compassion, if they've never experienced warmth, kindness from themselves, or, you know, throughout their lives from other people consistently, from other important people like primary caregivers and things like that, there can be a real fear of experiencing self-compassion, a fear of being kind towards ourselves, and that can hold a lot of people back too. That's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, that's kind of going back to the where I mentioned that whole distancing as well. I wanted to mention that before going into this, that whole distancing as well. It's because when you can't just tell yourself, I believe this is going to happen, or I'm going to believe this is going to happen, if your nervous system isn't in the same regulation place. Because if you're still fight and flight and just trying to make yourself believe something, it's not going to pan out the way that you think it's going to pan out. Like, this is why you can't force a process. You can't just end up with a goal body and think that everything's going to be perfect. You need to go through the process. You need to fail in order to get to where you want to go. You don't win your way to success. You fail your way to success, because you learn more about yourself. You learn what not to do. You learn what you don't like, which actually ties into what I was going to say with what you were saying. It's this fear of the loss of control as well. But bringing that actually reminded me of what you mentioned before with, if there's no joy in your life, how are you ever, you're going to be on a forever chase because you're chasing the wrong thing. Something stuck with me, and it's something I've said ever since I heard it. It's not about there's being something broken or that you can't do something. It's just we are trying to solve for the wrong problem. It is hard to get a solution to something when the problem that you're trying to solve for is the wrong one. And it's hard to know what that problem is if you only see that one way. And I want you to talk about that, but I feel like this joy part comes into it, because it's hard to know if you distance yourself from your life and if you don't even know what it is, like your values. I reckon values, that's perfect fitting here.
Yeah, 100%. It's I mean, it's all of these things, they all link together, right? But yeah, you can't keep beating yourself over your head with a logic stick. Like, that's not going to make these rational thoughts fit in any better. Like, if you feel uncomfortable, if you like, and same with like, if you feel fat, no amount of telling yourself that you're not fat is going to get rid of that feeling. You have to work through the feeling, and working through feelings with thoughts doesn't quite always yield the result that we want it to yield. So again, I always say to my clients, you can't keep beating yourself over the head with a logic stick. It's not going to make something sink in. But yeah, the idea of like needing to fail, like that's how you get it to success, absolutely. But if someone is so terrified of failure, if failure brings up such an overwhelming feeling of not good enough, of shame, of just feeling horrendous in themselves, then it makes sense that they're not wanting to fail, because who in their right mind would want to put themselves through that, right? So it's about helping somebody develop the skill set, or as a client, if you're a listener of the podcast, it's about figuring out how can you reassure yourself in the presence of failure? How can you support yourself in the presence of failure? How can you be that kind, supportive other to yourself when you are going through the ups and downs of life, when you're, engaging in that failure? Because if you don't have that psychological skill set, you're not going to be willing to fail. And if you're not willing to fail, you're going to get in your own way, because you're not going to be willing to do the things that are going to potentially, we don't even know if you're going to fail, but you're not going to be willing to do things that are potentially going to expose you to that failure. Therefore, that's where you get stuck. So it's not even about like figuring out how to overcome that fear of failure. It's about how can I develop the inner narrative to support myself should I fail, and how can I be nice to myself in the presence of failure to be able to move forward? And that's again where that willingness comes in, and that's where the values tie in, right? If we're moving towards the things that matter to us, on the flip side of the things that matter to us is the thing that we want the least, right? But in moving towards what we care about, we have to be willing to contend with the fact that failure is likely. But that's why values are so important, and that's why values are different to goals, because when we set values, when we're choosing to move towards our values, it's not something that you ever arrive at. And I always use the example of the compass. I probably have said this on your podcast before, Ruby, but this idea that our values work.
I'm sorry, I stole it from you, because I now always talk about moving east.
It's not an original idea from me. That idea comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. But that idea that our values are a bit like a compass. So if you choose to move east because moving east is important to you, then no matter how far east you go, you're never going to get there. So if you value your health, and that is the value that you're moving towards, like, you never achieve health as such, right? It's something that you ongoingly have to nurture and work on. And how you do that, the behaviors that you engage in to move towards that, look different depending on your life stage, depending on your life situation, circumstances, etc. But the value doesn't change. So, and you never arrive at health. You never get there. Ta-da, you got there. Stop doing those things, because then you would move away from that value, right? And so thinking about those values and moving towards them, we don't always like, or we're not expected to like every single step of the process, but it's when we get tangled up with that discomfort, that's when it gets in our way, right? Like, that's when it shows up. So let's just say that, for example, for health, a way that you might engage, like, some behaviorally in that value of health might be committing to going to the gym 3 times a week, right? But then, so that's what's going to help you get to health. But then that thought and that discomfort of, well, that's not enough. I need to do more. That's not going to be good enough. You're shit. Why can you not do more? That's going to get in the way. Think of it a bit like as a roadblock. And when that shows up, and you see that as a roadblock, you know, instead of being willing to, I don't know, for some reason you're in a car in my head, right? Instead of coming out of the car, figuring out what the roadblock is and finding a way around it, we often just go, shit, well, what's the fucking point in even trying? And we turn around and we move in the opposite direction. If I can't go 3 times a week because that feels like it's not good enough, I'm just not going to bother trying. And then you're moving further away from the value. And it's like, how does this make sense? So being able to realize that that is what our default is, because we're not willing to work with the discomfort of what's getting in the way, helps us. Even just recognizing that helps us go, okay, I see there's a problem here, so I need to maybe do something different. So how can I kind of contend with that? How can I resolve this right now?
And if you keep trying to fight upstream, it's really hard to even see what stream you're fighting. It's kind of like when there's rapids. Well, if you let the current take you backwards a little, you might find that there's a stream just over on this side where the rapids aren't as hectic, and you can start to breathe a little. And if before you know it, you just found a log. You can sit on a log. You can actually look around and experience the environment instead of thrashing away your life, instead of thriving through your, hey, that sounds cool. Yeah. Thriving through your life. It's this need where people always feel like they need more discipline, they need more motivation, they need more willpower, because as you mentioned, it never feels like it's enough. They need to have this control. If I can't do it perfectly, I can't do it at all. If progress only happens if I'm pushing hard enough, if I feel like I'm doing this hard effort. I actually had a client say to me that I love it when my clients are so aware, because it makes it so much easier. But she goes, I realized that the whole sabotage and feeling like I really needed to change things and things weren't working was because I'm so used to things feeling really difficult, but this actually feels really easy compared to what I'm used to. And that's where a lot of people struggle as well, because that is discomfort. The discomfort of, what if this doesn't get results? It feels too easy. Whereas I know that when I push really hard, at least I feel like I'm doing really well. I have to control everything, otherwise I'll lose progress. But there was a question I wrote down. Oh yeah, why do we avoid discomfort so much? That fits in with that.
I mean, because it's uncomfortable. Like, why do we avoid discomfort because it's not pleasant, it's not nice. And I don't think anyone really prepares us for how uncomfortable things are. It's a skill that we have to learn over time. And, you know, if we've had a relatively cushy life, or even if you've had an incredibly difficult life, like if you've had a really easy life, generally speaking, why would anybody want to add discomfort to their life? It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? You know, it's not, why would we do that from a, you know, why would anybody make things more difficult than they have to be? And if you've had a very difficult life, why would you add more difficulty to it? So the reason we avoid discomfort is because it's unpleasant. And often when we experience discomfort, it makes us think or feel like there must be something wrong with us. We see it again as this personal failing. I'm finding this difficult because I'm stupid, because I can't cope, because I don't have my shit together, to kind of come back to some of the points that you raised earlier. I'm experiencing discomfort because I'm not good enough, and this discomfort is a signal of my failure. And when I'm brought face to face with my failure as a perfectionist, I freak the fuck out because this feels horrendous and I don't want to feel like this. So I am going to avoid anything that could potentially make me feel that particular way, because it brings us up thoughts of not being good enough, and who wants to feel that way, right? So it makes a lot of sense. Discomfort isn't pleasant, and if we didn't have the tools to be able to support ourselves when we experience discomfort, if we don't have the tools to be able to support ourselves when our inner critic comes online and starts trash talking at us, then it's going to be really, really difficult to engage in discomfort, because it's going to feel horrendously unpleasant.
Especially when you feel like you've been trying to get results for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're faced with a slowdown. It's very conflicting with the inner narrative that you have in your head. It's challenging your schema, and we don't like that dissonance. And when there's dissonance, our internal state is in this fight or flight. As it is, I want you to go on that one as well. But I feel like so many women want this thing so bad, but it's almost like wanting it that bad is stopping them from getting results. It's like leading to the self-sabotage because of the inner self-talk that they're having with themselves, and they're always picking themselves apart for everything. They're scared of. I think it all comes down to a fear of losing progress or ending up worse if they let go of control. I don't know.
Totally. I mean, absolutely. It is exactly that. It's this feel of like losing control, losing the progress, but not just losing the progress, but like then finding themselves feeling the same way that they felt before, right? Like if you, let's just say you've gone through like a long weight loss process, you've lost, for the sake of this example, let's just assume you've lost like 30 kilos, right? So you've gone from carrying a significantly higher amount of body fat to now being relatively lean. You still don't like the way that you look, but you're scared that if you stop dieting, that got you to this point where you feel better than you did before, but you're still not the way that you want to be feeling. You're scared that if you stop dieting, you're going to go back to where you were before. That is an understandable way to be thinking, because that's all you've ever known. So of course doing something different is going to feel horrendous. It's a bit like what you were saying there about like clutching at straws. For some reason, the example that comes up for me, or that I tend to give to my clients, is like, imagine you've got like a really cute like kitten or bird, and you just love them so much you just want to squeeze them. But if you squeeze them, you're going to kill them. And I know that sounds like really dramatic, but it's almost like you have to hold it lightly, and you can hold it lightly and you can nurture it and you can pet it, but you have to hold it lightly. We have to be able to hold our goals and ourselves lightly. If we clutch for control, like literally, if you're listening to this podcast, not watching it, if you grip something super tightly and you're constantly gripping it, your forearms are going to get really sore, your hands are going to get really sore, and this is how you're operating through life. Like, it feels tense as fuck. Like, it's really hard to do anything. And I mean, my hands are in fists, so how the hell am I going to, already like just the punching analogy, like how am I going to engage with the world in open, in a compassionate way? Like that's no way to be living. So just realizing and recognizing that we are just clutching at straws with that tension, and having compassion for the fact that it's not our fault that we do this, the fact that like, this is difficult, like it's really uncomfortable, we're just trying to escape feelings of feeling like shit, which makes a lot of sense. But the way that we're going about this, the way that we've been taught to do this, the way that our mind will automatically want us to do this, it's not in a way that is actually going to help us in the long term.
That just reminded me of the example that you gave me with the hands. Maybe you can talk people through that one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like, if you imagine your thoughts and feelings, your uncomfortable thoughts and feelings as being like your hand, and if you're listening to this and you're able to do this right now, if you're riding a bike or something or driving, please don't. But if you imagine your thoughts and feelings as your hands, let's just say that you've got this thought of, I hate the way that I look, and therefore I need to
feel fat.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah. Let's just imagine that. So if you feel fat, I want to imagine that thought is written on your palms, and that you're walking around the world with your palms right in front of your face, and your hands are covering your eyes, and your elbows, you're lifted, your arms are lifted, and you're literally trying to go through the world like this. And so how on earth are you supposed to see anything around you when your hands are literally in front of your face? The world view is limited. All you can see is that thought of, I hate the way I look, I'm fat. That's all you can see. Is it any surprise that you're finding it difficult to respond to that in any other way other than, well, let me get rid of this feeling by going on a diet? Of course not. Of course it isn't. But if you kind of extend your arms in front of you, hands are still your feelings, you still got this feeling of being fat, but now there's a bit more distance between you and the thought, and you can kind of like Ruby said earlier, like you can look around the room and go, maybe there's a different way of responding to this. I don't have to just like chop my hands off and get rid of them. If I just gently push it away, if I notice the fact that I'm having this thought, if I recognize, oh, I'm having the thought that I'm fat, and I'm having the thought that I want to respond to this by dieting, just in the act of noticing that that's what you're doing, that allows you to also notice lots of other things around you. Or if your mind is consuming you with this sort of like, you're fat, you need to lose weight, you need to lose weight. I mean, that's so hard. That's so hard. But again, if you can push your hands away, hands of thoughts and feelings, give yourself a bit of that breathing space, just recognize what your head is doing, not try to respond to it, just observe what's happening. Again, that in and of itself is going to give you enough distance to go, well, how would I like to respond? I have a choice here. I don't have to respond by chopping my hands off and getting rid of this feeling, uncomfortable as it may be. How would I like to respond? What makes a bit more sense for me right now? Because if I chop my hands off, then I've got no hands left, right? To go with that analogy. Whereas if I can just drop my arms down and have my hand there, I get to do so much more with myself. I get to do so much more with the world around me. And that makes it a lot easier to make those choices, to do, okay, I'm willing to feel the discomfort and kind of do it anyway. But again, it's a process. It's a skill, man. Like, this is hard. This is why I'm a psychologist and why I've got a job, because this stuff is really, really, really difficult, not just for everybody else, but I'm human too. This stuff is hard, and that's okay for it to be hard. You don't have to know how to sort yourself out, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of the most important part there as well that you mentioned, because it's going to take a while. And most of the time we're not solving the actual problem. We're just peeling away the onion layers. Like every single time we look at this thing, we're peeling back the onion layers. And I feel like a lot of people don't want to let themselves really go into this because they're afraid of what those are, like you mentioned, they're afraid of what those uncomfortable feelings will bring. But not only that, they feel like if they actually break through this thing, now there's all these fears of, oh, but what if I can't keep it? What if I lose my body? What if I start to get fat? What if I start to XYZ? Because now I fix my problems, I'm going to let my body go. I'm going to feel good within myself and blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's, yeah, I'll let you answer that.
But it's exactly that. I mean, you know, all this fear, again, that could be like a thought on your hands, right? All this fear of like, oh my God, what if I lose my body? What if I lose my progress? And then because we can't see anything else, we end up responding to that in the same way that we normally would, right? Which is through more dieting. And actually that's what ends up making us lose the progress, because then we look worse if we're constantly dieting, right? We're not going to see that progress that we want. It's because we're so consumed by that fear. Whereas if we can recognize that we're getting scared, if we can recognize that we're responding to that fear in a very, very normal way, of course we're going to respond that way, of course, because it feels really uncomfortable. It's not nice, and that's okay. But if we clock it, if we can recognize that that's what we're doing, we can go, I'm noticing that I've got this fear that I'm going to lose all my progress. When I notice that I've got this fear that I'm going to lose my progress, what that makes me want to do is to diet. But I've done that before. So actually, maybe because I'm noticing that now with this distance, maybe I can see that there's a different option. You know, if I've always responded by default in that way, but I'm clocking that, I can now see, maybe if I do something different, what would that be like? You've trodden that path, okay? Maybe I can do something different. Therefore, what is the compassionate skill that I need to develop to be able to accept that it's going to be uncomfortable, to accept that it's going to be difficult, but to be willing to experience that discomfort and that fear in the service of moving towards that physique progress, that goal that I've got right now? Because clearly my thoughts and fears are getting in the way. But if I can distance myself enough from them to see the wood from the trees, I can go, oh, maybe there's a different way of responding to this right now. Maybe I can do something different. Maybe, if you want to.
I think this is a great way to come to like summarizing in the tie, because everything that you just said there, it's as soon as you start to take those steps, it's building trust in yourself, building confidence in yourself. But you're not going to do that if your mind doesn't come with you, just like when you said about getting this body without doing the mental work there. And just like I said about, you can't just believe something true if your nervous system, if you aren't in a position that you've allowed yourself to allow that thought in. But that's not going to happen if you don't build that trust within yourself. And that's not going to happen if you're trying to rush there, if you have this sense of urgency of fixing your body, of fixing everything that's going on. And that's why, like, you work with psychologists over long periods of time, because there's nothing to fix. There's only layers to unravel and unwind and try to understand yourself. And it doesn't mean letting go of your body goals. It means actually, being like experiencing the process you're going through, actually, what's the word? Like recognizing the changes that you made, because you're not going to recognize it. You could end up at your dream body and still feel like you're fat because you never did the mental work. You're still uncomfortable within yourself. Something else hasn't been solved. You've been solving for the wrong problem. Exactly. And this is where the self-sabotage comes in. And I wanted you to really ramp on the self-sabotage because it shows up everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that, right? If we keep clutching at straws, if we keep avoiding the discomfort, if we keep being unwilling to, to pause, to just be a bit in the present moment and recognize what we're doing, we're going to be spinning the wheels over and over. We're going to keep engaging in those behavioral cycles of, I'm not good enough, I'm going to set big goals for myself, I'm going to fail at those goals, I'm going to feel worse about myself, I'm going to press the fuck it button, I'm going to self-sabotage, and then I'm going to be in the same spot at, eventually, where I'm going to be wanting to set myself the same big goals again, the same, if I've lost a bunch of weight, but I want to build loads of muscle, but the discomfort shows up and I feel like I'm not doing enough. When I feel like I'm not doing enough, I'm going to press the fuck it button because it doesn't feel like enough. And I'm going to double down. I'm going to do more. And then I'm going to burn out. And I'm going to feel like shit, nothing's going to change. I'm going to be like, well, what's the point in that? And I'm just going to repeat the cycle over and over. So really, it does just take time, and it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of self-kindness to be able to hold yourself through the process, doing the thing that's uncomfortable and new. Of course it's going to be hard. Duh. Like, yeah, it is going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unknown. But if you're willing to experience that discomfort, if you're willing to develop the skills to support yourself through that unknown process and through that unknown part of the journey, then you will be able to see those results over time, for sure.
I love that. You just answered two of, I had three questions I wanted to end with, you answered two already. So everything that she just said there, if you're wondering how you can start to shift your deep beliefs that lead to self-sabotage, there's that answer. And then how you get out of the all or nothing loop when you feel like you messed up, that's the answer as well, because you cannot break, like you literally cannot break a cycle until you become so aware of the cycle you're trapped in. Like, do you want the same results over and over again, which is kind of a lack of results? Yeah. Or do you want change? Like, change needs change, and change is uncomfortable. So equation sum, algorithm sum, level 1 maths, level 2 maths, that equals discomfort equals the change that you want to see. Yeah. What's, to kind of tie bow on this, what's the first step someone can take today to start trusting themselves more in this process? What's something powerful they can do? And then if there are people into journaling, what's a way that they can, there's two questions. What's the way that they can then use the journaling as, I hate the word journaling, let's just say thought dumping and brain dumping. How can they use this thought dumping and brain dumping to then help them move forward? So start trusting themselves, and then how can they use journaling if that's something that they are into?
How to start trusting themselves? Whoa, that's a big question. I think it's not the way, but one way in which you can start to trust yourself is allowing yourself to slow down. Like maybe doing, whether that's a mindful breathing exercise, or like not even like a sit there and be super woosah and try to clear your mind, but maybe even something like a progressive muscle relaxation, or like a body scan type of breathing exercise. That can be really helpful, because that's going to force you to pause and to pay attention to how your body feels. And when you pause and allow yourself to pay attention to how your body feels, that starts to build a bit more of that mind body connection, which I think is the thing that often gets in the way. So I would maybe say start there. And in terms of like journaling and something that, or like thought dumping around that, I think it's just, I would almost say like allow yourself to pass the mic to your inner critic. Like let your inner critic be the, like, do the thought dumping for you. And I just think that for a lot of us, we walk around unaware of how intense, how loud, and how horrendous our inner critic is. And when we see it written out, it's like, is it any surprise that I'm finding this difficult? Of course not, right? And that can almost be that first step of compassion, is if we pass the mic to our inner critic and let our inner critic do the writing for us, that can help us become aware of how much self-directed hatred, frustration, etc. we're carrying. And when we realize that, we realize how unkind we're being towards ourselves, that can almost bring up some compassion, and then we can cling on to that. Once you feel that compassion, everything else becomes so much easier.
And I really loved that. Like, wow, I didn't expect that one. That one is huge. Let the inner critic write. And when you start to read over the very things that you're saying to yourself, and imagine saying that to your kids, to your best friend, to your loved ones, I highly doubt that you would be happy with yourself. It's almost like verbal abuse, literally.
It's not almost, it absolutely is. But even like, not just to other people, but to yourself, like you're literally speaking like that to yourself. Like that is heartbreaking. It's a horrendous. It's not a fun place to be, and is it any surprise that we're finding it difficult to make changes when we're literally being horrific to ourselves? Of course not. Like, of course that's how we're going to be responding. So, the answer's in the pudding, right? Like, the way that you change is by starting to change that narrative. And that's really freaking hard, but it is possible. And that's quite exciting too.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. Clara she's so good with all of the stuff all over her social media. Go and follow her Instagram. Her whole feed is on the whole perfectionism. It's on self-sabotage, on self-compassion, and it is really hard for you to make any physique change. I know that the shit is intangible. I know that it's not a number on the scale, but no matter what the hell you achieve, it is literally temporary. It's fleeting. It's never going to last. It's never going to make you happy until you learn this self-compassion stuff, until you start to bring life into it and find what gives you joy outside of the things that you think give you joy. Where is your purpose? What brings you happiness? Is it social connections? Is it curiosity? Is it creativity? Is it your dogs? Is it your family? Go and find that out and allow yourselves to experiment. I think that word is hand in hand with curiosity, but I like the word experiment. Experiment with things. build that trust within yourself. And I love you all. Is there anything that you want to sum this off with? Oh, also her link's down below, but is there anything else that you want to sum this off with?
No, I think you've nailed it. I think it's exactly that. Give yourself the permission to do something different and see what it's like. You might hate it, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. If you don't like self-compassion to begin with, that's probably a sign that you need it more. But yeah, I think that's a good summary that you gave there, Ruby.
I actually found it funny that you said you might hate it, because it's like, well, don't you hate where you are more? Don't you hate where you are right now? What's the biggest hate? But yeah, love you guys. And if you found this helpful, reach out to either one of us. Please give us a 5-star rating if you can, and you will hear me on the other episode. But do let me know what you gained out of this, because I feel like this is a very under-discussed topic. Love you all.
Bye.